Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks very much for being here. Please make sure that you set your chat settings to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you're talking about. That'd be really useful. You can do that in the drop down in the chat box. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Scott Parkin. I'm the Chief Executive of the IEP. Welcome to the IEP webinar series. This is our 8th in a series of webinars in partnership with the Better Health Generation. This week's webinar is the last in our current series with the Better Health Generation, is entitled, Can CBT Help Me or My Clients? I know it's sad, we've all come so far together on this journey with excellent support of the Better Health Generation, but do not worry. We've got an excellent webinar program coming up for you over the next few weeks, looking at subjects like coaching, employer engagement, and online learning. And if you've enjoyed these webinars with the Better Health Generation, which I'm sure you have, you can still book their courses where you'll get all the tools you need to support yourself and your clients. And happily, for me and for you, they'll be back in a few weeks with a mini series of webinars around the challenges of returning to work. So look out for that in the IEP Learning Network e-bulletin. I would like to personally thank Kylie, Natalie and Andy for bringing these amazing learning and support to IEP members. I've learned a great deal, and I'm sure all of you have. So the last thing I want to say is stay well, stay safe, get chatting on the chat link, and please remember that all of our webinars are recorded and available on the IEP YouTube channel. So thanks, Kylie, to you.
Thanks, Scott. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Kylie Henderson. I am a clinical psychologist and also the founder and managing director of the Better Health Generation Australia and the UK. So our company is made up of a number of different brands, all with the same purpose. The purpose of our business is to help people to fulfill their full potential. So many of our brands work in employability. Some of our staff work in disability. Some of our staff work in mental health, aged care, adults, children, corporate services. So again, all with the idea of helping people to achieve their full potential. We also own a technology business called Your Health Plus, and it is specifically designed, again, to help people to achieve their full potential and to provide the digital technology that's needed to help us access services readily and quickly when we need them. And I think that business in the space of the last 12 months has significantly grown, given where we're at the moment with COVID. So thank you everybody for joining. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you haven't been on a webinar before, there is a Q&A section in the bottom toolbar. That's the best place to ask me questions, and I welcome any questions throughout the presentation. And keep chatting with your colleagues and your peers. If you recognise anyone on there that you haven't spoken to for some time, please go ahead and keep chatting. Just so you know, we have set you all to mute because there is a number of people joining today, and the best place to get your voice across is via the Q&A or the chat. So I'll leave you all to that. We have a lot to get through today, so I'm going to try not to speak incredibly fast. But if you don't understand anything, please add something to the questions. So this is me, as you'll see. My objectives today is firstly to make sure that we all understand the impact of unemployment on wellbeing. I'm sure that's not new to any of you. My second objective is to help you to develop an understanding of CBT and how you might be able to apply it firstly to your lives and secondly to your clients' lives. Many of the presentations that I've delivered on this webinar series, people have come back to me and asked me how I might be able to apply that skill to clients. So today is our finale, I guess, for the next couple of weeks. We're having a couple of weeks break. I'm giving you the opportunity to do both. I'm giving you some skills in CBT that you might be able to use yourself and also some that you might be able to use with clients. So hence the time pressures today. I'm sure it is not news to any of you that unemployment and job loss have a negative impact on well-being. In fact, there's a chicken and an egg scenario going on here. Some researchers will say that you have a mental health condition and so therefore you lose your job and then you become unemployed. Or where other researchers, and I'm on this other researcher's side, would say that you might lose your job due to a range of circumstances, but if you are unemployed for a longer period of time, that you then develop a mental health condition. So I think it's no surprise to us that there is a significant correlation between not working and your well-being and your mental health. One of the theories behind why unemployment has such a significant impact on your mental health was developed by a lady called Marie Jahoda, who is a UK-based researcher. And she argues that in order to have ideal mental health, we need to have these 5 factors in our lives. We need to have time structure, we need to have social contact, we need to have a collective effort or purpose or a reason for getting up for the day, a social identity or a status, and regular activity. So I guess when you think about these 5 factors and you consider unemployment, many of these 5 key components are missing. So most unemployed people are missing a time structure. Some unemployed people don't have so much social contact. There's not so much of a purpose for the day. Certainly their status is impacted. Some unemployed people obviously have regular activities and requirements, but many don't have a regular set activity. So interestingly, this is the theory as to why there are more mental health concerns and wellbeing concerns for the unemployed than there are the general population who might be working. I thought it's interesting to raise these 5 factors because during COVID-19, our wellbeing was impacted. We missed out on the normal social contact that we might have. We also missed out on the regular activities that we might have normally had. And of course, our time structure had changed quite a bit. Many of us were working strange hours, longer hours, mixed hours, and so the time structure was really interfered with during this time. So I guess this theory applies not only to making sure that you have ideal mental health, but it also applies to the unemployed as well. So let's talk about what CBT is. CBT is the acronym for Cognitive Behavioural Therapy. The cognitive section of the word CBT is fairly obvious if I use my arrow here around the particular thoughts that people have. It's understood through CBT that a range of thoughts that you have will lead to particular feelings, which then lead to particular behaviours. So I guess what we're saying is that you might have the example where you say to yourself, something bad is going to happen, which will lead to a range of feelings. Normally in that instance, it might be fear or anxiety. And I've given you a bit of a feelings wheel there because the cheats way of finding out what feeling it is normally it's one word, which then might lead to some particular behaviours such as avoidance, inactivity, or self-destructive behaviours. I'll try to stop this annotating. You can see the connection going on there between all of those factors. So that's the premise of CBT, that a situation might occur, you'll have a particular thought about it, which will then fuel a feeling within you, which then leads to you behaving in a particular way. Often that's then reinforced. So if you've got avoidance in that behaviour, it's then reinforced. You're reinforcing your thinking that something bad is going to happen, so I won't go out, and then you avoid it. So therefore it's a little bit reinforcing in that way. I guess the other element of CBT is that we recognise some patterns in people's thinking, which leads us to understanding some core beliefs that they might have developed about themselves or about the world. So those core beliefs tend to be, simply spoken, is the glasses that you wear or the way that you see the world are really your core beliefs. So a great example of that is if you have a core belief that you are not as good as everybody else, or that the world is unsafe because you've been involved in a motor vehicle accident or something like that, then every time you go into a situation, your thoughts are likely to be, or the situation is likely to be viewed through that style of belief. So you might walk into a train station and believe that the world is not safe, which might lead you to start thinking, hang on, should I get on this train? What if something happens to me? Which then leads to feelings of exacerbated anxiety, which then leads to you likely to avoid that situation. So core beliefs are actually a really important part of CBT. And it's really important for you to recognise what kind of core beliefs you have. Because sometimes in CBT, you can change this triangle as much as you like, but if you don't change the core beliefs, then people will always be vulnerable to viewing the world through that lens. So the example I gave about safety and fearing that the world might not be safe, I can help somebody standing at a train station to change their thinking about the what if something happened to me on the train, what if something happened here. I can get them to change that to something might happen, but I'll be okay. But unless I address the core beliefs and the reasons why they formed the original belief that the world is not safe, that will continue to crop up. So that's how core beliefs kind of intersect with the CBT triangle. Now, I bet you're all wondering there, oh, gee, what kind of core beliefs do I have and where do I get these core beliefs from? We are going to talk about some core beliefs and I'm going to address some common ones today. So the best way to identify your core beliefs or your job seekers' core beliefs is to have a bit of a look at these ones that I'm showing you today, and that might give you a bit of a hint. So I'm kind of arguing that there are 6 steps in CBT, and these steps are not necessarily aligned to the meetings that you have with job seekers or the sessions that you might have as a psychologist with your clients. They're really phases that you might go through in therapy, and as we know, the UK has these amazing NICE guidelines, and they pretty much set out the number of sessions that you're supposed to have. Many of us health professionals will argue there's always a variance in that, and everybody comes with their own individual circumstances. But put plainly, I guess there are 6 phases that you would need to go through with CBT. Step 1, first step in CBT is to help a client or yourself to identify the situation that you might be in and the consequent feelings that you're having. This would normally be in a journal or a diary that you might give to a client, or I might give to a client, and I'd ask them to start recording the intensity of that feeling. And I've spoken about this before, but the intensity of feelings is really important because feelings are not black or white. They all come with a different level of intensity. And that's a really personalised description of how that person's feeling at the time, and you don't want to miss that. So I encourage people to start identifying feelings as if they're on a thermometer. Start thinking about the percentage of those feelings that you might be having. Stage 1, I'm really looking at situations and the consequent feelings. I'm not too worried if they mix up the thoughts that are going on for them in the column A. I'm mostly just wanting them to start recording the intensity of their feelings and naming those feelings. I have to tell you, I'm not worried if they name the feelings in any other way. So, you know, sometimes I'll hear, maybe this is an Aussie slang term, but I'll hear clients saying, I just feel crap. And that's okay, as long as I get them to articulate the intensity of how crap they feel, that's okay. It's most important that you let clients and job seekers use the feelings words that they feel most comfortable with, rather than getting it entirely accurate and getting the spelling right and all of those other issues. I should also say that in the context of working with a job seeker, that normally we would have a different methodology than this type of diary system for somebody who has low literacy, to help them to identify feelings. So we use different tools in that setting. The second step is to differentiate between the situation, the thoughts, and the feelings. So in this example, we've got working from home during coronavirus. These are the particular thoughts that might be going on. This is the internal dialogue that's going on for somebody, and these are the consequent feelings. So you can see I'm just adding an extra column into stage 2 to help people to differentiate the difference. I find this questionnaire quite helpful if a client or a job seeker is finding it hard to identify the particular thoughts that they're having. I use this questionnaire, the automatic thoughts questionnaire, to help them to identify negative thoughts that might have gone on in the previous couple of weeks. Interestingly and antidotally, if I'm seeing a job seeker with anxiety, they tend not to score highly on this questionnaire. But certainly the other types of common mental health conditions, we would see somebody scoring quite high here. So again, I'm coming back to these thoughts, and I'm helping the client to identify the difference between the situation that they're in, the thoughts that they're having, and then those consequent feelings. And the automatic thoughts questionnaire just gives us a cheats way, if you like, of finding out exactly what thoughts people are having. And the other goal, I guess, of the automatic thoughts questionnaire is to give me a benchmark of the number and score of the negative thoughts the client might be having at the start of intervention. Because my goal as a clinician, and my goal in all of our business lines, is to create an impact score. We want to know from the first day we see somebody what the time one benchmark score is of how many negative thoughts they're having compared to when we leave intervention and finish CBT with them. We want to know how many negative thoughts they're having there. So this questionnaire in some ways provides a dual purpose for me. Step 3 is then identifying unhelpful thinking patterns. So as you saw in the previous example, there were 3 different negative thoughts related to the coronavirus, and these often relate to a particular thinking style. There are about 10 different negative thinking styles, and you can almost guarantee if you use any of these thinking styles that are on this page that you will end up with a negative emotion. And it will lead to that perpetual negative triangle that I showed you that is quite reinforcing in many ways. So this example, the black and white thinking, there's no way I can work from home because it isn't set up properly for it. You know, that's black or white thinking, because there is some ways you could potentially work from home. I'll never get to see my work friends. That's a mental filter error. Something bad will happen and I won't have anyone to support me. Again, that's jumping to conclusions. And you can see how the other examples align to the different thinking styles. Quite interestingly, the shoulds, I should go and exercise. That's a common one I have, but luckily I know how to change that one. the change is I could go and exercise, but I should go and exercise always leads to guilt. So shoulds or a must tend to lead to that feeling of guilt. So again, if we're doing CBT, step 3 is to identify any negative thinking patterns. I guess what we're doing there is once we predict if there's a pattern, we can likely predict how that person will then respond in future events. As an example, if somebody was doing a lot of shoulds, I can almost guess that when they go into a job interview, that they're going to be saying to themselves, I should be doing this perfectly. I should make this interview. I should be good at this. And that kind of thinking is only going to make them quite a lot more anxious and potentially make them avoid that situation. So here I am again coming up with the thinking styles and how that might impact on the future behaviour of that particular person. So step 4 in the CBT process is to go to the A, B, C diary and then add in the D. So we now know from the examples, the black and white thinking, the mental filter, the jumping to conclusions, but now we're trying to change each of those thoughts and we're trying to look at whether or not that particular thought, number 1, is helpful or not. If it's not so helpful, there must be another way of thinking about it. And what we're trying to do here is to change that thought and adjust it slightly so that the eventual feelings go down. And again, we repeat that. So step 4 of CBT is to say, how will I dispute these negative thoughts? I now know that situations don't lead me to thinking a particular way, and then that thinking leads me to having particular consequent feelings. But now how do I change them? What do I do now to dispute those particular thoughts so that I can change my feelings? That's really what step 4 is about in CBT. Now, once we understand a little bit about the negative thoughts, there are some particular techniques that you can use to help dispute the negative thoughts. There's 7 key techniques that we use to help people to try to change those negative thoughts. The first is to find evidence. If we had to go to court and look at the facts, where would the evidence be that that thought that you're having is particularly true? What would a judge say? Because often we find with mental health that clients have had negative thoughts for such a long time that they become like their comfort. And to be able to ask them to change those negative thoughts is often really hard. They don't want to. They've had them like that for so long. And if we try and get them to change them, it's like a doll they want to carry around with them. They don't want to let go to that. So these 7 techniques we use to help clients who might be resistant to changing and I guess looking at the alternate view to their thoughts. I won't go through all of these examples, but I think a couple that I use regularly are cueing and priming. And I use those because often what you'll find in that previous diary that I showed you is you'll find a pattern in the situation and the negative thoughts. So you'll find that, you know, every time they go to the in-laws or something like that, there'll be these particular negative thoughts. So priming and cueing allows you to say that before you go to your in-laws next time, I want you to start with that D thinking. I want you to use a post-it note, or I want you to use a reminder in your phone, or I want you to cue yourself up that every time you jump on a train, this is the kind of thinking that you need to repeat to yourself. But the priming and cueing is a great way of interrupting what might normally be just a negative cycle. I arrive at my in-laws, I start thinking all these negative things, which leads me to being in a bad mood, which leads me to behaving in a way I'm not normally used to, and so on and so on. So if I can break that cycle by priming someone before they get there, that's a great way of giving them a sense of control over the way that they think, and that therefore they're less likely to have the attitude at the in-laws and probably just get along with people and not feel so guilty about it afterwards. So what you're seeing here on this slide is really a handout that we would use regularly with clients to help them to practice those strategies. And in all of our service lines, we give our clients these kinds of tip sheets because we want them to take something away and practice something. We want them to practice change and doing something in a different way. So step 5 is to identify the particular core beliefs. And I talked before about how core beliefs are like the glasses that you wear and the way that you see the world and yourself through. So we want to identify if there are some patterns in somebody's negative thinking, there is more than likely some core beliefs that need to be addressed. And we need to be able to assist clients to move past these core beliefs and almost to alter them just slightly so they're a little bit more balanced. One of the most common core beliefs that I've heard in my career as a psychologist is the I'm worthless core belief, which leads people to seeing themselves worse off in many situations, including job interviews, work, and so on. And obviously, if you hold that core belief, when anybody gives you feedback, you take it on board like a rock on your head. It doesn't give you the opportunity to start thinking about how you might deal with these things constructively. So let's have a look at some common ones. You can see the defective core belief, the one that I just mentioned, is up here on the left-hand side of your screen, the I'm worthless. There's an entitlement to core beliefs. There's an abandonment, there's a helplessness, a responsibility, an unlovable core belief. I think probably the most common core beliefs I've seen would be in the defective and unlovable space is quite common. But you can see here, if you walked around with these glasses on and any of these glasses, you know, I am unwanted, and you put that on and you said that to yourself every day, and it became a subconscious belief that would impact on the way that you saw the world and the way that you did things day to day. So the step 6, and probably one of the last steps in the CBT phases, is to help a client to create a more balanced core belief. To look at the evidence or experiences for the old belief that they held, that, you know, I'm worthless, and then to try and find evidence or experiences for the new balanced belief, which is more likely to be something like, I do have worth and I am a good person. And when you're doing that, you're looking back through somebody's history and their timeline and trying to find at least 5 solid concrete events that will demonstrate to others that you actually are worthwhile and that you do have some worth. So that's kind of the last stage. So again, if I just reiterate these stages for you, step 1, excuse me, go back. Step 1 is really differentiating the intensity of the thoughts. Step 2 is identifying the automatic thoughts that somebody might be having. Step 3 is to help identify the patterns in any of those thoughts. Step 4 is to start challenging those negative thoughts. Step 5 is to identify the core beliefs. And then step 6 is to start challenging those core beliefs. That would be the normal phase for CBT. Now, I guess the next part of my presentation, though, is about, can CBT help my clients? I understand and you know from, I'll get to my next slide. Sorry guys, I'm a little bit, I don't know what's going on with my technology today. Yeah, we can understand from the previous discussions that there are 6 stages in CBT, we know that. But I guess the answer to this question, can CBT help my clients, and particularly those who are looking for work or the unemployed, the answer is absolutely. We know that particular thoughts, like I'm not good enough, or I won't cope, or I might have a panic attack, could lead to these particular feelings and these particular behaviours. But what's really interesting is in the last few years, a term called work CBT has come out. And in fact, work CBT is a stronger predictor of helping an unemployed person than CBT alone. And let me tell you a little bit about work CBT, because now you know something about CBT. The research is saying, firstly, that work CBT is 65 days faster to help somebody get back to work. And we save more than £3,300 because of the time saved in that person going back to work sooner. It equally reduces mental health symptoms. In fact, we know that it improves self-efficacy and it's faster. So how do we apply it to our clients? The first thing we need to do, and you'll see up the top here in this slide, this is one of our templates. We use the agenda setting time. We set an agenda to discuss the clinical skill or the mental health issue, but we also include in the agenda how do we discuss the employment or work journey. So the W in the CBT really says 50% of our time needs to be absolutely focused on the mental health issue, and 50% of our time needs to be focused on the employment journey. And we need to have that in our day-to-day sessions that we have with clients. So as an example, if we go back to the triangles, we know, sorry, I'm having a little bit of a, we know here in this triangle that just talking about not being good enough and changing that particular thought as part of the 6 stages of CBT is not going to be the only thing we need to do for job seekers returning to work. We need to talk to them about 50% of the time about this global issue that they're having with mental health, but 50% of the time about how their thoughts and their feelings and their behaviours are likely to impact on their ability to gain and sustain work. So in this example, I'm not good enough. I need to talk to the client 50% of the time about how that thought is likely to impact on them preparing for work, is likely to impact on their interviews, is likely to impact on their cold calling, and all of the things that they need to do to prepare for work. And if I don't talk about that with them at the same time, it is 67 days slower to get them into work. So essentially, people who leave and just do CBT and not work CBT, they leave this employment discussion to such a long time down the journey that it takes too long to get the person back to work. So work CBT is essentially setting the agenda, making sure it's a balanced discussion, and guiding the job seeker through the next stage of employment. So to answer the first question, can CBT help me? I think absolutely. CBT is a great source of self-discovery, self-awareness, self-management, all of those key skills that we know are part of having a really good EIQ. It can help your well-being during isolation. We know that our well-being is being tested during this time. Marie Jahoda says that we're missing some really key components of good mental health at the moment. So absolutely CBT can help you. Can CBT help your clients? Well, the answer to that is actually no. You need to be using work CBT to help increase the well-being of job seekers. If you don't know much about work CBT, please get in contact with us, because that is the foundations of what our Aim to Work business is built on. And we can help you to apply some of those principles and to teach you in more detail how to apply those principles to job seekers. So that's about all from me. I've taken a little bit of extra time because I rushed through the two elements I wanted to teach today: CBT for you and work CBT for your clients. But before I do go off and you head off to get back to work, just a couple of further opportunities. Scott's already mentioned a couple. Reserve your place in our Lunch and Learn series. They are already started, but you can join and you will get access to the tools and the videos. Get in touch. We're delivering some bespoke webinars for other organisations, again, around the principles of either helping you to fulfill your potential or helping your clients to fulfill their potential. We're also sending out a survey at the end of the webinar. If we'd love your feedback. If there's other, I know Scott's already sent some stuff out about topics for other webinars, but if you want some specific webinars that you'd like us to deliver, please let us know and save the dates. We are again coming back to present as part of the IEP in a few weeks. There are our contact details. Anyone who's after the slides, they will be on the IEP YouTube channel. Helen, any questions?
Yes, we did have one question come in through the Q&A. Can it ever be dangerous to address core beliefs as a non-specialist?
I think it can be potentially dangerous, but remember the principles of self-improvement are always firstly self-awareness. So I think if you can help a client to become more self-aware and get them to start noticing these core beliefs, even if you don't know how to help a client to challenge them, just noticing the core beliefs is enough to start people on their journey to change. So I don't think so. I think firstly, the best strategy you could have is identify them in yourself first. And once you become really good at doing that, I guess that's a really great experience for you to then look at whether or not you can do that with clients. I should also say, Helen, some of the information that I've presented today might spark some people thinking about their own mental health. And I want to encourage you all, if there was anything on that core beliefs slide or any of the other slides that I presented today that might be quite personal to you, I encourage you to reach out and to seek some support. And we know that there are a lot of supports available at the moment in the UK, and some of those supports are free at the moment. So please reach out if something's cropped up. Don't be afraid to reach out to myself, Andy, or Natalie confidentially, and we'll make sure you've got the support if you can't find it.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, nothing that's come in via the chat or the Q&A through me.
Excellent, it must have been clear as mud today.
I think the feedback's it's been the best. People have really, really enjoyed it. I think they've been too busy just taking it all in to ask their questions. So it was really good. Thank you. That's
good. Yeah, there was a lot of information. So please go back and watch the video. It will give you, probably prompt you to have more thoughts and questions. And as I say, feel free to reach out. We're all in this together, and we want to make sure that we're all working together to address, I guess, the burden of mental health and wellbeing that's happening for everybody. So thank you again. We'll leave the chat going if there's no more questions. I know people like to chat for another 10 minutes. Say hi to your colleagues. And thank you again, Helen and Scott, for the opportunity. Natalie and Andy, did you have anything to add before we leave?
No, not for myself, Kylie. That was really interesting and have been really helpful. So it's been good to be able to deliver these sessions with Scott and the IEP team. So look forward to coming back in July and seeing some of you guys on our sessions at the lunch and learn sessions. The next one on Tuesday. So yeah, it'd be nice to continue to see everyone on those as well.
And for me, it was just a great session. I can't believe we've already done 8 weeks. If we can support anybody, please reach out to myself or Andy, and we will provide as much support and advice as we can, and join our sessions that we have running every Tuesday. And as Andy's just said, we look forward to rejoining these sessions back in July. Thank you.
And look out for my newspaper article that's coming. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Kylie, is that for the IEP Journal?
Yes, it's coming.
Great. I'm really excited about that. So thank you very much for that. Listen, once again, as I said for this, thanks very much for everything you've done. I think in the normal phase, this isn't goodbye, it's au revoir, isn't it? So we'll see you in a few weeks' time, smiling from the other side of the world. And yes, I mean, the feedback today and every other day, but particularly today, is just how amazing these have been, how helpful they've been, how supportive you guys have been, and we can't thank you enough. So the way to thank the Better Health Generation, the way to learn more, the way to get the tools you need to be an even better practitioner than the amazing practitioner you are currently, is to get on the Lunch and Learn series with them, and get all the bits and bobs that you need from that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.